The Indianapolis Colts have had a fantastic opportunity to coach as well as scout the Senior Bowl talent this week at practice ahead of the big game on Saturday. So, which players are standing out the most? How can they potentially fit the Indianapolis Colts? And what are your burning questions for the 2025 offseason, as well as a critical crossroads of an upcoming campaign in year three of Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. My name is Drake Wally, deputy editor for the site, as well as co-host of this wonderful show. And I am joined by my fellow analyst, as well as the other co-host of the show, Noah Gebert. Noah, we decided to do a hybrid episode today. So the first half of this bad boy is going to be each one of us highlighting four of our favorite guys that have stood out at Senior Bowl this week. So many, but we had to try to break it up because our last episode was all about the Senior Bowl. But then we're going to answer some questions that we've gotten from plenty of the fans and plenty of people who are really curious about this franchise. But yeah, how you doing? What'd you think of the Senior Bowl this week? And some of these guys, I'm sure that you think, hey, they could look good in a Colts uniform.
Yeah, it was a fun week. I think we went into this past episode where this was kind of the kickoff of draft season. The first time we sort of brought up any of these guys and talked about any of these guys. And we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants, at least I was during that episode. Just a lot of these guys that this is the first exposure that I had to them. I was kind of preparing for that episode when we were going to talk about these Senior Bowl guys. So it was a fun week. Watching some of these names that we brought up during that episode and see some of them kind of flash and just kind of you're pinpointing these guys when they're flashing and all these highlights are getting posted on X and Twitter and those are going around. You're like, hey, we talked about him. So it's cool to have some guys and this is your chance to do that early on in the off season.
Yeah, and there's so many areas that the Indianapolis Colts need to address that really this could be. I think it was our own Jake Arthur that mentioned it on Locked On Colts. This could be a best talent available type pick for number 14 because the Colts just need so many things. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get jumping into everything here. I'm going to go ahead and start. Logan Schmidt, a.k.a. Scotty Colt, thank you so much. He actually provided a couple of questions here. So thank you so much for the super chat. As always, loyal listener and an absolute just a wrecking machine on the X platform. He talks to Colts players, gets people laughing pretty hard, even makes shirts for players like Tyler Goodson's mother. So absolutely fantastic guy there. And then, of course, we have the one, the only Hustle Man Jones dropping a $2 super chat. I heard Fannin sucks and Mason Taylor is our guy. We'll go ahead and address that one. Fannin has, I think that people just assumed that he would come into the Senior Bowl week and just dominate everybody else as far as a pass catcher. We'll get into a couple guys here that we think have shown out as better tight ends this week. I wouldn't say that he sucks, but Mason Taylor has looked good. Noah, what's your opinion on Harold Fannin Jr.? I know that he's a little closer to Noah because we're talking about a player that played for his alma mater here.
Yeah, Bowling Green alum. So, yeah, there's guys like that come in from the MAC and they come into Senior Bowl week and they're blowing people away. That was like your Quinyon Mitchell last year coming in out of Toledo, same conference, and just kind of shredding it up in one-on-ones. It's maybe a little bit concerning that the one-on-ones are always the offense has the advantage in pretty much every one-on-one situation when it comes to Senior Bowl week. It's except for the trenches, which we'll get to later. But yeah, so you'd kind of hope he'd have a little bit more success, but I don't know how worried you are about it. There were a couple pretty acrobatic catches. I saw clips of Fannin in the back of the end zone making really great catches, but getting 1 foot in and kind of celebrating that and then realized, oh, wait, this is the NFL. We need to. So there'll be an adjustment period for sure, just because of the level of competition that he's coming from. So maybe you're not thinking he's going to be the high impact guy right away. This is rare, so you shouldn't expect this of anybody. But like Brock Bowers last year, coming in at tight end and producing at such an insane level, you're probably not expecting that from a smaller school guy like Fannin. You're just hoping you can develop that skill set that you saw.
Yeah, and he's got a high upside as a pass catcher. I also Noah made me aware, hey, he might actually be a little bit of a better blocker than what a lot of the analysis is. And when you look at the tape, he could service at times as a better blocker. So I think that I don't think you can predicate everything on this week, because like even the first couple practices, quarterbacks are a little rough because they're trying to get into the swing of things. These guys are catching passes from guys that don't typically throw the football to them. So it's going to take time. And, that's why the actual game is so lighthearted, is because it's only been like 4 or 5 days you practice with these guys. So, we'll have to see. Tight end, what a big position this year. And then we've got a couple of others here. We got NFL Nerd. Hey, fellas, picking up my girls from basketball practice. Making time for us in the middle of family responsibilities. What an absolute legend. Thank you so much. I actually just was watching my daughter for not too long before we jumped in here. Stats Matt, third host of the show. What's up? Sean Conkright, as always, thank you so much for joining. Bruce, what's up? John, what's up? Man, we got so many people in here. But yeah, we're just going to kind of jump into the first half of the episode here. Are really just, this is more of a lighthearted episode. We'll go as long as you guys want to, because if you want to throw in additional questions, put them right there in the chat. We will get to them. But who has stood out at the Senior Bowl 2025 practices? Probably like 20 guys, honestly. But me and Noah wanted to keep it to 4 each. I will go ahead and start off with Noah's, because it's man, he's probably not going to be a Colt. Maybe. We'll see. But this is possibly my favorite player from this week. Absolutely looks dominant, shoving guys on their asses in one-on-one drills and blocking drills. Go ahead and jump into your first one here. No, I'm excited to talk about this guy.
Yeah, that's going to be Mike Green, the edge guy out of Marshall, who we briefly touched on Tuesday's episode or Monday's episode. He had some clips of him dominating in one-on-ones, going around. Lots of people interviewing these players at the Senior Bowl, and they're asking the defenders who's the offensive line who's the toughest opponent you went up against. It's Mike Green. You're asking the defensive line who's the best player in your position group. They're saying Mike Green. So, I mean, the stars are kind of aligning for him in this week, where he's winning all those one-on-ones in very flashy ways. And he's, again, like we've talked about, one of those small school guys going up against bigger opponents, stronger opponents that played at a higher level than he did during the college season. So you're getting to see him against some tough competition really stand out, which is really good for him.
Yeah, and you're talking about a guy that's had a little bit of he's had a little bit of a college journey. So obviously started at Virginia. I believe he sat out a year and then actually transferred to Marshall. And I mean, in 2023, yeah, you're talking about 22 tackles, 9 for loss, which is almost 43 tackles, 9 for loss, 4.5 sacks. That's kind of like numbers. And now we're talking about, 2024, dear Lord in heaven, 84 tackles, 23 for loss, 17.0 sacks. He had a couple passes defended. He had 3 forced fumbles. I mean, I understand that, you're probably not playing, the highest caliber of opponents. But in the NFL, when you're at a smaller school, the only way you can stand out is if you are clearly dominant over everybody else on your tape. Mike Green was dominant. And then you see that tape and you're thinking, oh, small school guy. You look at this guy during Senior Bowl, he's absolutely wrecking people. I mean, he's just running over. He's not even he's fast and he's agile. But my goodness, man, he's just absolutely running over people. And Patrick Rice says it right here. I saw some clips of that dude, and wow. I mean, he's probably put on some of the best tape that I've seen from the Senior Bowl. I mean, do you think that he really – he's possibly playing himself into I think they were talking about him being a second rounder, but possibly an early second rounder, or maybe a late first rounder. His stock is definitely going up. What do you think? Yeah,
for sure it's going up. And I think if you're the Colts, there's kind of 2 things working against. If you're a Colts fan that wants Mike Green, there are 2 things that are working against you. One is that, that transfer down in competition from Virginia to Marshall is kind of the opposite way that Chris Ballard tends to go, where he kind of prefers those guys who transfer up in competition. That doesn't necessarily disqualify him. But the one thing that might disqualify him is he might be playing himself into such a high stock that the Colts can't justify using that high of draft capital on a position they just addressed with the 14th pick last year. Or 17th? 14th? I'm getting confused. The 14th this year. 15th last year?
15th last year,
gotcha.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, man, you can really never have enough pass rushers. And I know one of the other things is, it's all going to hinge on, what are they going to do with Dio Dangbo? If they re-sign him, you pretty much have Leatu Latu. Then you've got Kwity Paye, you've got Dio, you've got Taekwon. I still think that they could use a
Ebukam still on the
jolt.
roster also.
And
So.
Ebukam is still on the roster. And if he comes back to full health, do not forget he was playing at a fantastic level against run defense in 2023. Led the freaking Colts in sacks and was second on the team behind DeForest Buckner in pressures on quarterbacks. So Samson Ebukam's a dog. So if he can come back to any capacity, that might throw a wrench into things. Still has a year left on his contract. We'll have to see. But this next one is starting to already jump into the tight ends here. Noah's got another one that I was so close to calling, and then I saw that you had it on our sheet here, and I was like, dang it, he beat me to it. But Mason Taylor, tight end, LSU. He's starting to look like a complete package. And yes, the Colts need a tight end that can catch. Yes, they need a guy who can get out into space, a route runner, a slot tight end, whatever you want to say. You also, when you have a running offense that features Jonathan Taylor, that features Anthony Richardson, you need a dude who can stay in line too. You need a guy who can take on those blocks and he can maybe chip someone as well, leak out on some easy routes for AR. Mason Taylor, really, everyone's talking about Tyler Warren. This is a dude who did really well, pretty much has set most of the LSU records for a tight end. In his 3-year career, he didn't drop below 36 catches, didn't go above 55. That was the most, but he had 129 catches, 1308 for yards. Wasn't the biggest presence in the end zone. But again, I think that there's a guy that you can develop here. He's going to be more of a complete tight end. I personally think that's what the Colts need. What do you think of Mason Taylor during Senior Bowl week?
Yeah, it's been a big week for him also. He's not necessarily that small school guy that we've been talking about some of these others. So he's had these opportunities to go up against higher competition. I think that's shown that he's more experienced in that the stage isn't going to be too big for him. Went to St. Thomas Aquinas, which is a huge school in Florida. I think that's where Philip Dorsett went, actually. To bring back some bad memories for Colts fans. And then straight to LSU and producing the way that he did at LSU. 6'5", 250. He's going to be that more prototypical inline kind of tight end, replacing that Mo Alley Cox role that you had or coming in over top of Drew Ogletree on the depth chart and kind of slide into that kind of role there.
Yeah, and, tight end is going to be so interesting because, right now you do have to mention this. There have been people that have been really excited, about it's a select few because the jury is so far out on Jelani Woods. People have completely given up on the guy. He's still on the roster. He's still there. It's just, my goodness, you missed the last 2 seasons. Granson's probably not staying. Alley Cox has a better chance of staying than Granson does. But then you have Will Mallory, who's not going to block much for you, okay? Then you've got Drew Ogletree, who is not going to run a lot of routes for you. This is a dude, if he starts every game and plays all 17, he's probably hauling in 30 catches for you. That's just not going to do much, for a number 1 tight end. So we'll have to see. Yes. So Hustleman Jones actually asks, yes, he is the son of Jason Taylor, I believe. So you're looking at a guy who has football lineage. Jason Taylor was dominant, so he definitely knows the NFL football game, grew up with it. But so James Sims has a really good question. We'll get to that one a little bit later. But yeah, tight end, huge need. We'll get to another one later on. But Noah, you've got a cornerback here that the stats aren't going to blow anyone off the water. Okay, he played 5 years in college for the Cyclones, has looked great during Senior Bowl week. I think that he came into this week with a lot of, looking at a day 3 stock, maybe undrafted. But man, this cornerback is really starting to show out, and he's one of those guys that's had a complete U-turn in stock. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, so this is Darian Porter, the corner out of Iowa State, like you mentioned.
Good
the
one.
big thing that stuck out to me is he was measured as the fastest player on the field in terms of game speed or play speed. I forget what it even was, 22.7 miles an hour or whatever on a gunner rep at special teams, which, to be fair, is going to be the only the best play you can be on to really clock your top 10 speed. But still, yeah, it's just like a 6'2", 6'3" corner, a little wiry, a little lanky, but he has that length. And then that freak athleticism with that speed there. I saw a couple people speculating he might even be somewhere in the 4.2s when it comes to Indy running the 40. So I mean that's just crazy speed and that height. I think Hustleman Jones just asking how tall. I think he measured in an official 6'2" and some change. Which is long. And when you're looking at those Lou Anarumo corners that they've had, the big thing is height, length, and speed, and that's what this guy is. But 4 years at Iowa State. This year is kind of the year that he really took off a 90.0 coverage grade from PFF this year at Iowa State, which is far and away his best year. So maybe a little bit of a late bloomer. I think he just turned 24, so he's going to be an older rookie. But if you're looking to take a guy round 4, round 5, I think you could do worse for sure.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's got a pretty cool story because his first, let's see, he was a 6-year player. All right. First off, he started in 2019 at Iowa State, did not leave the school, but you're talking about no picks all the way until 2024. Dude just has 3 out of nowhere, has the speed to take a football and run it back. I know that he only had 5 return yards here, but this is a guy that, like you said, people need to realize Lou Anarumo is going to have a say in these draft picks. He's going to have a say in who really stands out at the Senior Bowl. Like Noah said, you do have Kenny Moore. He's a shorter cornerback. He also has freakishly long arms. Okay, that's a guy that on press, he's going to keep you real far away, and he's going to be able to right away dictate what you're doing with your route. This is a good fit. I think that Darian Porter has really shown out. Like I said, the stats aren't going to blow anyone out of the water here, but he might be able to be a solid depth corner. And I think if you do take – if he's your first corner, maybe a problem. But I will say that I wouldn't be mad at all if they took – a day 2 corner, and then you turn around and you get Darian Porter in day 3. I'm not skipping ahead. You stop that, Noah. Darian Porter, day 3. I think that you've got yourself a solid defensive backfield there. But don't forget the Colts also double dipped. I think did they triple dip with Jalen Simpson? No, that was
Jalen Simpson's technically I guess he was a safety. They moved to corner. I guess, yeah, that's maybe. Right.
Yeah, so I wouldn't even be mad if they double dipped. But yeah, I do absolutely like Darian Porter. And we got so Wyatt Law here says that the Pro Football Network simulator ranks Darian Porter at number 64-ish. So you're definitely looking at a day 2 pick in that regard. But just to go ahead and we'll keep it right here in the defensive category. So this is a guy. You can call it, as far as football, it's probably not one of the most renowned schools. But University of Kentucky corner Maxwell Hairston, I kind of screwed up and gave everybody the lowdown on that one reading the outline here. But look, you're talking about a guy who's the stature is not what you just heard with Darian Porter. This is a guy who's a little more compact. He's a little smaller, blazing speed. Okay, great timing. He knows right when to punch a ball out. He waits till that football's in your hands, and then it's underneath the elbow, boom, from behind. There was multiple clips of him breaking up beautiful back shoulder passes down the sideline. A guy who's not going to get beat in a foot race, probably looking at, maybe he could play a little bit of corner. He could probably play both. But this, I love him. I thought he stood out, but does he fit a Lou Anarumo type of defensive back? Probably not, but I'll tell you right now, this guy's a speedster. What's been your impressions on Maxwell Hairston, whether for better or worse for this Colts defense?
Yeah, I think he's probably right around the cutoff for what Lou Anarumo is looking for in terms of size. One thing, I'm just a trend with these guys. He was around 180 pounds. I think he weighed in at super light guy, just like Porter was. But I think he's right around 6 feet, so that's going to be right around the cutoff. And with that speed, you're maybe thinking he's going to be a guy that can play on the outside for you. I think he took very minimal snaps at slot or at safety. So, he's pretty strictly a wide corner, especially this past season. So you're probably projecting that to be the same kind of role that he transfers into when he comes into the league. So yeah, I think this is another good option. I think he's probably rated right around the same kind of area where Darian Porter's going to be in terms of draft position. So you'd be spending some pretty similar draft capital when you're trying to compare the two. And when you're looking to bolster a position like corner, like the Colts have very little to no depth at corner. So you're going to be looking at that. These are definitely going to be two guys that the Colts are going to be making some decisions on in the next couple months.
Yeah, and it's actually I'm glad that Hustleman Jones put this out there. They triple dipped when they got Juju, Jalen, and as Patrick puts here, Darius Rush.
Yeah.
Darius Rush didn't make the roster because one, he couldn't stay healthy, and one, Jalen Jones decided I'm not really a seventh round pick. I'm more like a second round pick. This guy has played out of his mind.
And then it was just this past season too. It was Micah Abraham and Jalen Simpson both at corner, and neither of them made the roster. So.
Yeah, and Mike Abraham had a hell of a preseason, absolutely balled out, and then it just wasn't enough. But yeah, man, a couple cornerbacks here. So now we're going to get on the defensive side and then on the offensive side, and we will get to the Colts Q&A. So guys, again, if you have questions you did not get on X, on Facebook, on YouTube, put them right here in this chat. In fact, from Rush did get that return touchdown and on, we will start answering those questions. And yeah, he did. Yeah, you're not lying, Hustle, man. There's been a couple cornerbacks that have balled out in the preseason. Just don't make the cut. So, again, take the stock on the preseason very light, please. So this one's actually been probably the most impressive offensive lineman maybe at the entire draft, and it just further proves that Division II does not necessarily mean you can't play in the NFL. Go ahead, Noah. This has been a guy I've really thoroughly enjoyed watching his tape this week.
Yeah, so this is Gray Zabel, offensive tackle or offensive guard, depending on who you ask, out of North Dakota State. Who's just been, by all accounts, one of the most consistent offensive linemen during this week of practice and one-on-ones. What you're really kind of looking for here is like he's probably around that late second, early third kind of range right now. I mean, obviously a lot of time to go before April, so that could move up or down pretty significantly. But that kind of talent level, I think you'd be okay with the Colts making an investment at the offensive line for a depth piece or potential starter, depending on how competitions shake out during training camp. But he's a guy who has experience at 4 different positions on the offensive line during his college career. Something that you kind of look for when you're weighing depth pieces. If you're not going for an out-and-out starter, then somebody that you want for depth on the offensive line is somebody who has experience in multiple positions. So I think you could play him at either tackle or guard spot and have him compete for either of those. He'd be great for depth and maybe some added peace of mind if you're moving on from Will Fries, even if you're not. And then depending on how the Braden Smith situation shakes out, if Gonsalves is going to be your starter, maybe you trust Zabel enough, maybe he shows out enough to prove he can be out on the edge as well. So that could be a competition for multiple spots along the offensive line.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, man, I think that if you can get a guy, we talked about it, if they're going to pick up a depth offensive lineman, it's going to be somebody who can play multiple positions. You have to have somebody who can be ready to just, boom, go in there at either guard, go in there at either tackle. I mean, we've seen guys like Blake Freeland. They've been the swing tackles. You've seen Matt Gonsalves. I believe he played multiple positions this year. Mm-hmm. It's just what you do. It's how you have to make your bread in the NFL if you want to be a depth piece. Nobody wants to look at you and be like, oh, so you can only back up a tackle? Well, we have a guard that's hurt. And so you can't play guard. That's really going to make your stock go down. So I love the fact that you said whether do you think of him as a tackle or a guard? That right there speaks to potential Colt, and a guy they probably invest the draft capital in. So this next one, we're going to keep it right along the lines of the trenches. I decided to mix it up again here. We're going to go, this guy's probably going to be far outside of the Colts' reach unless they decide to absolutely piss off fans in the first round. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Ole Miss. Really not shocking anybody here. Looks dominant. Looks like he is going to cause some serious issues on the interior. He's probably going to gobble up double teams. Just an absolute monster. He's a disruptor. He's probably going to do everything at the least at a decent level. First round stock is what he's really played with. I think that's what we've consistently looked at him as. Do you think that there's a chance that if, let's say that, Tyler Warren's off the board, let's say that a cornerback the Colts wanted is off the board, potentially whoever, if he's sitting there at 14 and he's best player available, do you think that they're going to take him?
No, Chris Ballard loves the trenches, right? He loves defensive tackle.
He's obsessed with it.
I don't think you can take a guy at 14 with as many needs as the Colts have at this point and slate him in as a rotational guy on defensive tackle behind two pretty outstanding guys who are playing in their roles right now. I know Buckner and Grover Stewart are getting up there in age. So, I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing, but I think for the Colts situation, Chris Ballard's not drafting for the next 3 years. He's got to make substantial progress in the talent of this roster and the talent of the starters on the team in this offseason and make a turnaround in terms of win-loss record coming into next year, or he's out of a job. So I think just for the sake of peace of mind for Chris Ballard, this would be a move that he would love to have the leeway and the luxury to kind of be able to make, but I don't think he has that right now. And I think Colts fans, would be pretty disappointed if pick number 14 went to what would essentially be a backup in year one in a do or die year.
Oh man, that would piss off. That would absolutely draw the ultimate ire of Colts fans. But look, at the end of the day, you're really banking. I don't think they're going to cut Raekwon Davis. I think that they're really banking on him being that backup guy. I don't foresee them keeping Taven Bryan, but you could probably find a depth defensive tackle in free agency. I also think you want a veteran at the tackle position. Yeah, I will say though, the case for this is that DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, they're not getting younger. They're in their early 30s. Perhaps if this dude's available, you're thinking long term, but I just don't see that happening. That, like Noah said,
Yeah.
Noah nailed it. They have too many pressing needs. You have to factor in Anthony Richardson here too. Like, you got to get this guy a potential weapon, or defensively, you got to get probably somebody in the secondary if you're going to spend anything on defense. But yeah, so this next one to kind of smooth out Noah's top four here that he really liked. This is another tight end that came out of nowhere. I mean, he's absolutely came out of nowhere. His numbers aren't going to blow anyone out of the water in college either. A guy that nobody thought of as a dude who might dominate the middle of the field. Of course, they were one-on-ones. Go ahead and dive into this. Miami prospect absolutely has killed the Senior Bowl practices this week leading up to the weekend.
Yeah, nobody was expecting him to be the standout guy at tight end.
No.
Really, day after day, he kind of proved that he was. And that's Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. This is one of those guys that Chris Watt, Colts assistant offensive line coach, is getting a hands-on experience with, because he's the tight ends coach, or one of the tight ends coach at the Senior Bowl, and this is one of the players that he's coaching. So he's got him up close, a really good eye on him. And yeah, he's been, by all accounts, the most consistent tight end, both as a blocker and as a receiving threat. Really surprising a lot of people with his ability to create some separation in these one-on-one drills that he's doing. I know at one point he caught a touchdown and punted the ball right into the concourse right away. So that's the kind of guy we want, right? So yeah, I mean, this is just the week's been great for him. Just kind of an under the radar guy that's really shooting up boards, and at a position that the Colts could afford to take multiple of. And with them having someone on the staff getting such a close eye on him, that's definitely someone to keep an eye out for come April.
Yeah, and look, again, tight end is going to be huge, and I think that I think Elijah Arroyo, if anything, he's putting in the Colts' mind we don't have to spend a first round pick on a tight end, right? That's what you're thinking with basically anyone but Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland. Neither guy was at the Senior Bowl for good reason. But I will say that Elijah Arroyo, one play that really stood out to me, Noah, was when I can't remember if it was a corner route or if it was just a seam. He burned a defensive back so just badly that the dude was trying to grasp and pull his jersey from the back.
Take the DPI and one-on-ones. It's rough.
Hey, if it's giving up a touchdown as opposed to a penalty, like this dude's break, his route running, he looks smooth. It's really difficult to, evaluate these guys in such a small, limited practice schedule, one-on-ones. Like you said, the offense is always going to have the advantage in those. But I was impressed. I was very impressed with Arroyo. Stock went through the freaking roof. They're talking about, well, it goes Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland. Now you're talking about potentially Elijah Arroyo as that third best tight end based off of some of the stuff he's pulled off. So, but yeah, I'm impressed. I think to wrap it up here, we'll talk about the one, the only Jack Kaiser. Now, fun fact, I used to play high school football for little old Lewis Cass High School in Walton, Indiana. One of our biggest rivals was Pioneer High School, 1A school in Royal Center, long before Jack Kaiser, but that's where he went to school, ladies and gentlemen. He went to a dinky little 1A school that won enough state titles to go to 2A. That's it. This dude has played 6 years at Notre Dame. Dog mentality. Homegrown kid, has played arguably better every single year that he's on the field. Not 100% sure where he's going to fall in the draft, but I love his mentality. I love his almost field general attitude as a linebacker. I'm not really sure 100% how he'd fit with the Colts, but it's just one of those feel good draft picks that I think would be a really good one for Indianapolis. What are your thoughts on Jack Kaiser? I know there's more talented linebackers, but he's just a gamer that feels like he deserves a Colts uniform to be put on him.
Yeah, there's for sure going to be more people that'll blow you away with their athleticism than Jack Kaiser will at the linebacker position. One thing I'm just going to say about linebackers straight up is if the Colts draft a linebacker on day 3, I pretty much expect them to be good. Just because their hit rate on linebackers has been so incredible over the whole Ballard tenure of the past 8 drafts. Kaiser's an interesting guy. I think we mentioned this with Darian Porter, where he's a little bit older. I think Kaiser will be pushing 25 by the time his rookie season kicks off, which is a downside there. But probably a guy that's immediately going to come on. And if you're looking to replace kind of a Grant Stewart role that you had this past season, you could do worse.
Yeah, and look, linebacker is going to be one of those that I think, you're not looking at EJ Speed to probably get re-signed. You're holding on to Zaire. You're really banking on Jalen Carlisle to be the guy that's going to provide you with all of those wonderful plays and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I do think that you're looking at him. He's definitely going to start out on special teams. I would not put Jack Kaiser out there to cover, to be that coverage linebacker. But I think he's got a lot of intrigue. And I think that his work ethic, his dedication to stay with Notre Dame that long, not, complain about a transfer here and there, because that's in a way it's helped streamline college football, but it's also made it so much more difficult to coach. Because now you got to keep everybody happy and, got to keep the smiles on those faces. So we'll have to see, man. At the end of the day, real quick before we transfer over to the Q&A, which one of these guys, Noah, that we mentioned of these 8, which one sticks out to you the most for a fit with the Colts?
I'm obviously going to pick one of my guys here. So.
Please.
I'm going to go with Gray Zabel. I think getting somebody in that round 2, round 3 range of offensive tackle that can play all 4 spots is going to be super valuable. Just with what's up in the air right now at the offensive line spots for the Colts. Maybe free agency will change my mind and kind of how things shake out. The decisions they make on their key players. A lot of free agents that we've gone over quite a bit on this show. They've got a lot of decisions to make there, and that's going to clear things up. But as things stand right now, I would love a round 2, round 3, really versatile lineman that can come in and immediately be your 6th lineman at worst, and then if not that, then compete for a starting role.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, man, I think that there's a lot to be had, a lot of things that you need to pay attention if you're a Colts fan. The Colts love the Senior Bowl. I mean, they absolutely are obsessed with it. So they're probably going to take – I wouldn't even be surprised if one of these 8 guys gets picked. But we do have the legend, the one and only, and actually we have 2 legends, Jake Arthur and Noah Compton. Say hello from Mobile, Alabama, a couple of absolute studs. Jake Arthur is our literal boots on the ground, more like Crocs on the ground. If it's Jake Arthur, he likes to keep it comfortable. So thank you so much, Jake. He has provided so much intel, great pieces. Go check out his work on Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. And Noah Compton is just absolutely wonderful. Go check out all of his coverage on X. You don't want to miss a beat with those 2. They're going to be giving you all of the pulse going on in Mobile, Alabama. So now we're going to get to my favorite part of this. We have plenty of time. Guys, we've got a slew of questions here that we've received from X, from text from people that knew we were going to be doing this, and also Facebook, as well as a few other sources. So if you have anything else in the chat, please go ahead and put it. But we're going to go ahead and drop this first one here. So I believe this one was from Facebook, but what is a bigger need, tight end or safety? Now that one, Noah, I think I'll let you start on that one because it's not an easy answer, actually. Yeah. Just because one position has 2 guys, they're doing completely separate things, especially in an Anarumo defense, and it's predicated, his success in that defense is predicated on that position. But the other one, they don't have a pass catcher. So which one are you looking at?
I mean, both are the tight end room just in general is pretty bare. And then safety, you've got one spot locked down and then one that's completely up in the air. And I don't think you'd feel comfortable with anybody on the roster right now filling that role. So both are going to need to be addressed. In terms of priority, though, I would say whatever helps Anthony Richardson the most is going to be the bigger need in my book, and that's going to be tight end in this case. So I think, getting somebody that can help Anthony Richardson over the middle of the field, shore up things in the run game, even if he's going to be a well-rounded guy as a run blocker, be kind of that security blanket for Anthony Richardson. I think having one more target that can get open and consistently be there for the young quarterback is going to be more valuable in the end. And really, everybody in the organization, their futures kind of lie in the hands of Anthony Richardson's development. So I think doing whatever you can to make that your priority is going to be number one on the list this offseason.
Yeah, and so on Spot Rack, you've got the top available, guys in free agency at each position. So I'm going to go ahead and name from third to first who those guys are to just tell you and show you how light this group is in free agency. Number 3 is Mo Alley-Cox. That's all you need to know, Colts fans. Run it back. 31 years and 3 months old. Absolutely not much of an option as a pass catcher. But look, don't be surprised if they re-sign Mo. I'm serious. Don't be surprised if they keep a veteran there. Sure as hell ain't going to be for $5.85 million a year. I'll tell you that. So the second guy is Juwan Johnson. He had about 50 catches, had a career year for the Saints. But then it's Tyler Conklin, who has weirdly been consistent. He's been what Kylan Granson wishes he was. I think that's what Tyler Conklin's been, only he's got more of an upside. So unless you're getting Conklin or Johnson and you are really going to grab yourself one of those tight ends we've talked about with a later pick, I just think that there's more options. Kind of, in fact, Patrick nails it here. You're going to have more options in free agency at safety than at tight end. And I just provided it here. I really think that you got to go with safety. And I think that you address it through free agency. Again, there's so many guys. Yet again, Justin Simmons is available. That was a guy that they didn't sign last year that everyone thought they should have. So there's going to be guys you can put in there at free safety. I personally don't think you need to draft one super high. Now, if you're sitting there at 14 and Malachi Starks is staring you in the face and all your other options are gone, then that's a hell of a pick. But, you got to put somebody next to Nick Cross. I'll ask you this. Do you think that they're going to retain Julian Blackman? That's how we'll end this question.
I'll say no. I'll say no on that. We went over in our internal free agents I think you were kind of thinking the same thing, where I don't think he would be the worst fit in that role, but you, at this point, are returning 9 of 11 starters just because they're under contract, unless you make some moves to get rid of some guys. You can't return 10 of 11 on that defense, especially with the defensive coordinator change. You can't. Even if you think they're the right guys, I don't know if you could justify that to the fan base. We're pretty much running it back with what would be about 85 to 90% of the starting lineup the same on defense.
Yeah. Well, we got a couple here from the one and only a friend of mine named Taryn Canospi, also, a diehard Colts fan here. What could Ballard do in the offseason to get back in the good graces of fans? Oh, man, what a question. Lots of answers. One, he could have been – I'm just kidding. There's a lot of ways to address this. I think first and foremost, you got to sign some outside talent. You got to be more aggressive in free agency. They don't have this exuberant amount of money. They've got like $20 million in the cap, 20 something. I think like bottom half of the league in cap available. So I think it's free agency. I think that he's tried to do it through the draft, because that's what they've tried to predicate their whole building process off of. Retain your guys, retain your pillars, build through the draft. What do you think he can do? I think right out of the gate, he could probably sign some free agents, mostly on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. When it comes to April, I don't think there's anything he can do to make fans more excited. Maybe draft Tyler Warren because this is Big Ten country and that'll get fans excited. But you spent that end of season press conference that we went over, and we kind of poured over everything that he was saying and how it was kind of a dramatic tone shift from everything that he said before. It's year 9. You have to show it now with actions, because I think people have heard the song and dance so many times, they're not going to believe it until you see it. It's going to go against pretty much everything that he's thought has been the correct way to build a roster. And it may not be the smartest business move to do it, but the only way that you could convince fans that you're operating a little bit differently is to operate a little bit differently and throw some money at some bigger names in free agency. I'm not
That's
saying
not what
that's the
Ballard
right
does,
move.
man.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's the right move, and I doubt that he does it to the extent that most fans want to see that shift from him. But that's really, I think, the only way that if you're trying to win the offseason for fans as Chris Ballard, that's the only way you're going to do it. So I think at this point, you're just going to have to eat what the fans think of you and build the team the best way you know how, which hasn't gone well these past 9 years. But I don't think the fans are going to be a fan of Chris Ballard after free agency either.
No, no. Ballard is going to, he even said this, and I still believe that he is operating by this. He said, if my style, this is paraphrasing, if my style gets me fired, so be it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that you're not gonna see Ballard do anything that he's not gonna change his thought process because he's really good at scouting, believe it or not. He's actually taught some guys how to scout that are pretty great in the industry. So I don't think that the draft is going to bring you much. It's free agency. That's how he's going to really change fans' minds. Another one from Taryn that's pretty good is how which skill players or groups are set up for success next season. I'll let you go ahead and start off with this one. I've got one that's in mind, but I'll go ahead and let you start off. Is there a skill group that you look at and you're like, okay, you know what? You don't really need to do much. You just need to develop those guys, or they already look good.
I've gone back and forth on this. I think at the beginning of last year, I was really down. I think maybe even midway through this season, I was really down on the wide receiver room. But when you're kind of looking at the guys that are there, I don't know what additions you need to make because I don't think you're not going to have that number one dominant guy. I don't think Michael Pittman's ever going to be like this dominant top 15 receiver in the league.
Sure.
So the only way you're going to drastically shift that receiver room is if you get a guy like that. I don't expect that to happen. I don't think that should be super high on the Colts priority list. So I think the guys that are on the roster are set up as well as they can be, where I don't think that much competition is going to be brought in to really take snaps away from them. And that's your guys, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, A.D. Mitchell, Anthony Gould to some lesser extent. But I think you can definitely justify adding some competition for the role that he provided. But yeah, those four guys, especially with the breakout that Alec Pierce had last year, I think before this past season, fans seemed like they were ready to move on from Alec Pierce, ready to see something different. And then he did what he did this year. And I think optimism's pretty high. A guy like Josh Downs, I think, is always going to have a lot of optimism. He's been a fan favorite since he got drafted. And then Michael Pittman, I think there were some people down on him throughout the year, and then he comes out at the end of the year, says he was playing with a broken back the whole season. So hopefully you get him fully healthy next year, and he can be more of a number one threat than he's been or what he's shown. And then you just kind of have to bank on the development there of A.D. Mitchell, right? So A.D. Mitchell, I think he excelled at things that you worry rookies are not going to be good at. And then he was really bad at things that you would hope someone could come into the league and already know how to do, like catch the football. But he was good at separating and getting open, and that's such an invaluable trait to have. So you just have to hope that he kind of the things that he lacked this past season, he did not lack in college so much. So you just kind of hope he finds his level there and can continue building on his ability to get open and kind of take a step forward in those other areas as well.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, man, I agree. Actually, I think that that's a great answer. I think that their most complete position right now, one of the most complete, is definitely wide receiver. I mean, you're talking from top to bottom. You have Michael Pittman Jr., you have Josh Downs, you have Alec Pierce, and you have A.D. Mitchell. You've got a guy who is a consistent winner and just gets his catches. You got a guy who is elite in the slot and is now starting to branch out to make bigger plays downfield. Then you've got a guy like Alec Pierce, who's arguably the best downfield threat in the NFL. And if A.D. Mitchell can catch that football, oh man, all he's doing is getting open. All he's doing is getting open. And I've crapped on this guy's pass catching ability at times because he likes to T-Rex those arms. Man, if Reggie Wayne can get him on point, I promise you, he's going to start showing that second round draft stock, maybe even more.
It might be the wrong route, but he's usually open.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot to learn. He needs to
Yeah.
be more disciplined and needs to grow up a little bit. And I think that you're going to see yourself, hopefully, with a good pass catcher here. So, another one that I love from StatsMat is what are your top 5 draft crushes outside of the main handful of guys mocked to Indy in the first round? So, some of these guys we did cover, but we'll go ahead and just give a few. Who are one of mine right out of the gate? I do
Thank you.
think that I do love Benjamin Morrison. I know that he's been mocked to the Colts, but I think that given his setbacks that he's had, I think that he is still a very capable cornerback. He's like based off of PFF, he's like the 16th ranked guy. Another guy that I really like is Jahdae Barron. There's multiple cornerbacks that I really like. Another guy is Will Johnson. Of course, his big board rank is 6th. There's cornerbacks that stick out, but then there's also guys that are going to fall later. Like one of my favorites is Maxwell Hairston. I know that he doesn't fit that prototypical Lou Anarumo size, but I'm all about these cornerbacks. I think that you're definitely looking at potentially double dipping at this position. You cannot have another, let up where you're having Drew freaking Lock and Drake May tear apart your defense embarrassingly in front of millions of eyeballs watching you on their television. So I think that that's going to be a premium. Those are a couple guys that stand out to me. We'll just go with is there a guy that you're like, man, I love this dude, or I love his fit potentially with the Colts?
Yeah, I'll throw out 2 here, and then maybe a later round guy that we talked about.
Right.
So just in terms of DB, I like Siobhan Ravel out of East Carolina. I just think his length, his speed is going to be kind of the prototype that you're looking for when you switch to defense. It's just, he's in that kind of late first round thing. I mean, we've got months to go. He could play himself to where picking him at 14 wouldn't be as much of a reach as it seems right now. Maybe Ballard does the trade down that he loves and is able to pick him up later. Another guy is going to be South Carolina safety Nick Emenwari, who is just he's the big, tall, athletic freak. I don't know if he's going to be straight up your free safety guy. I don't know if he's a Colts draft crush necessarily for me, but I think just in general a draft crush guy I liked watching and seeing him pop off the tape whenever I was watching some of these other guys for the Senior Bowl that we were covering. And then late round guy I did talk about on the Monday show, and that's Jeffrey Bassa, the linebacker out of Oregon, who I think that is a really good fit for the Colts, actually, and a draft crush that I could see coming to pass come April.
Yeah, Bassa has impressed. That's another guy that really stood out that neither one of us really put here, but that's a guy that you just constantly heard his name. Play after play after play, hustle after hustle after hustle. This is a guy that I think is going to make an impact in the NFL. We got a couple more questions here. I don't even know if we'll get to Colts news and rumors. Luckily, really isn't very many, if any. But yeah, so one of these is a difficult one. Should the Colts cut Braden Smith for cap space? So interestingly enough, first off, I don't think they will, unless he decides to leave football. They save $16 million.
Yeah,
16. They have 19.5 million. That's how much they save. They owe $3 million or 3.5 million in dead money. That's a lot of money. That's like 2-3 potential signings. I don't think they should cut him. I think that you're still dealing, if he can get through whatever he's dealing with and he can return, you are still dealing with almost an Anthony Costanzo like stalwart on the edge, a guy who isn't going to see a Pro Bowl probably, a guy who just does nothing but provide you consistency. He took some steps back this year, but I would tend to say that he also is struggling probably with some lingering injuries and some personal matters. What do you think? Let's just remove the personal matter from it. Do you think that he is somebody where Matt Gonsalves gave you enough confidence where you're like, you know what, hell yeah, this is the dude, this is the guy, Blake Freeland behind him, we can roll with that? Or do you think Braden Smith is worth that money to not save in the long run?
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of speculation for sure, just because we don't know the situation. One. The question is, should the Colts cut Braden Smith? I'll answer the would they? I don't think they would. Even when we're talking about guys like Samson Ebukam and Raekwon Davis and Braden Smith, and these guys that the Colts could cut to free up cap space to make some moves, the Colts haven't done that before. They don't cut guys under contract. It just hasn't been the way they've operated. Maybe they feel a little bit more fire under their seat. at this point in the ninth year of Chris Ballard's tenure, and they're willing to make those moves. But I don't see him changing 100 or doing a 180 on that in terms of like he's always going to take care of his players, um, regardless of kind of whatever situation that Braden Smith is going through right now, which the Colts have kept very private. And I think that's adds just another layer of complexity to the morality of moving on from a guy who may be in a situation where that's not the best thing for him. Maybe some of the emotion that Chris Ballard talked about plays into that decision. Should they cut him? I think other teams would be in a better position to move on from Braden Smith than the Colts are.
Good
Where
answer.
you're dependent on Anthony Richardson's success next year. Like we've said so many times, I don't think Matt Gonsalves. I think he played just fine coming in as a rookie. The the sample size that you got from him, I don't know if you can feel confident with him being a bookend tackle for you on what's a make or break year for a very very struggling rookie or young quarterback. I think you just eat that money if Braden Smith's willing to come back and play. You say, yeah, we're paying him what we're paying him because we can't afford to take any risks at the offensive line and regress in any way when we have so many other areas that we need to get better in.
Yeah, and look, man, you gotta go with the quarterback here, and
Mhm.
I just don't trust Gonsalves yet. Is he? I mean, the Colts traded up to get him, right? I mean, so clearly they see something in this guy, but they weren't with Latu the same thing. They weren't trying to shove this dude out there to start,
Yeah.
right? So it's like it's not exactly what they wanted to do; it's what they had to do. And it's the same with Bortolini. So another one that really stands out is this is from the legendary Andrew Moore. Which 49ers free agent would you like to see the Colts make a run at? One of three: linebacker Dre Greenlaw, cornerback Charvarius Ward, or safety Talanoa Hufanga. This one is difficult. I want to say Talanoa Hufanga, former Pro Bowler, first team All Pro, just an absolute monster. But he has really struggled with his ACL. Can't stay healthy. Dre Greenlaw just coming off of a bad injury, ironically running from the sidelines. Charvarius Ward's the guy that stands out to me. If you're going to take a swing at one of these dudes, go cornerback. You can find a safety elsewhere in free agency. You can find a safety in the draft. Charvarius Ward has years ahead of him to play. That's my pick. Which one of those three guys sticks out to you the most?
Yeah, I think we're on the exact same page there. Um, yeah, Charvarius Ward, I think, is going to cost more than the Colts are going to be willing to pay just because of how many spots they need to upgrade and how kind of little cash they have. With that added caveat that I think both of us or neither of us really expect them to move on from a lot of these big contracts that they could get out from under. I just don't think they'll have the money to get Charvarius Ward and then make other moves that they're needing to make. And then Hufanga, I think, is a safety who's versatile and can play and free and in the box. But I don't think he's that pure free safety that maybe Lou Anarumo's scheme is demanding at this point. So I think he'd be a great pickup, but I don't think he fits ideally. And then Dre Greenlaw, yeah, worried about coming back from that injury. Linebackers, I think the Colts have shown they can hit late in the draft and evaluate that talent pretty well. So I would definitely go after Charvarius Ward, but I don't see any of them really as that likely, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, and at the end of the day, man, they definitely still need more. They're going to need more in defensive secondary. So, full disclosure, we're not going to get to Colts news and rumors because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 more questions. One of them is right here in the chat that I just absolutely had to highlight. Evening, guys. Tired as Noah's dog, but give me your favorite. Give me the little puppers is taking some naps back there. Give me your favorite options for RB2. Devin Neal.
Yep.
Devin Neal from Kansas. Man, that's one. Who's the dude from Delaware? Oh God, I'm having. Oh no, I put him in one of my pieces. Anyway, a guy like Devin Neal is Trevor Etienne, another guy. I think that the Colts either need a pass catching back to change the pace here, or they need a guy who is your Zach Moss replacement because we saw the impact that he could have in 2023. Taylor was getting 25, 26 sometimes like 30 carries a game. It's like, dude, that's just too much.
Yeah.
Guy like AR, you put him in there, you have your drafted running back here, you got Taylor here, and you've got like a formation where you have to deal with 3 potential runners. I think that'll help a guy like Jonathan Taylor. You got to preserve that prime. Is there a running back too, whether through free agency or the draft, that stands out to you? I think that they should address this in the draft, but that's just me.
Yeah, so I was looking at free agency just because I wanted to throw out a little bit different answer. And I was looking at these guys. I'm like, J.K. Dobbins maybe, but I don't know if that excites me any more than taking like a third or fourth rounder. And then plus, like, you're paying Jonathan Taylor what you're paying him. I don't think in terms of just how you allocate the salary cap, I don't think it's smart to pay a veteran contract again, unless it's a veteran minimum contract at the running back position when you have options in the draft, especially with the class how it is. Man, if you're asking me to pick a draft crush at running back, I don't know that I've looked at enough of these guys to really give you an opinion. I know a lot of people are going to want me to say Scatabo out of Arizona State. I know he's a fan favorite. And just his versatility and how he could fill pretty much every role at RB2. But I'm not going to say it because I don't want to give you guys the satisfaction. So, man, I like Devin Neal too.
Yeah. We've got there's plenty of guys that you could put in this position that I think could be a nice backup to Taylor. Of course, we do have to get to the super chat here. The CFO, Patrick Wright, thank you so much. As a former NFL scout, the Colts should take Quinn Ewers at 14. They can't afford another season of under 50% completion percentage. So at the end of the day, man, I'll address this just talking about Anthony Richardson. If the Colts do take a quarterback in this draft, they are telling everybody, like, we're pushing him. We're making sure we've got the right situation here to hopefully bring out the best in Anthony Richardson. They bring in a veteran. They sign somebody like, one name is Jameis Winston. You bring in a guy that's rah blah blah blah. You're bringing in that guy to compete with Richardson, but you're also bringing him in to kind of you're hoping maybe mentor him a little bit. I think that's going to come more from Sam Ehlinger, but. We'll have to see, man. That's an interesting one. I'll just ask this. Do you think that they're going to draft a quarterback in this draft at all? Do you think that they're going to pick one?
Yeah. I think it's going to be late, but I think who's the last one that they draft? I would have to pull that up again. I guess it was obviously Anthony Richardson, but beyond that, I don't know who the last one they drafted was. And you've got Sam Ehlinger not under contract, Joe Flacco not under contract. You're going to have to get bodies in the room at some point. And taking a late round flyer on a quarterback is never a bad idea, especially when even at your starting position, you're not 100% sure.
Yeah, very fair, very fair. Well, we'll get to the last two here, which are pretty interesting. The last one's pretty lighthearted, but this first one is, who was your standout success story for 2024's Colts team? You know what? I might not get the best fan reaction here, but I'm going to go. I know that he pissed some fans off at the end of the season, but I'm going to go with Zaire Franklin. The reason I'm going to go with Zaire Franklin is because he forced those turnovers that he was criticized for not forcing.
Yeah.
He got those sacks he was criticized for not getting. He forced 5 fumbles, guys. All right, Zaire missed his tackles. There were times where he wasn't this guy in coverage that you want. That's just not who he is. He ain't going anywhere. He's just not going anywhere. He had like 173 tackles again. He led the NFL in tackles. Last season broke for the second straight year the Colts single-season tackle record, previously held by him and then previously held by Shaq Leonard. So I think Zaire's only going to get better. I think maybe he needs to grow up a little bit, sure. But my goodness, man, he's a captain. I think the guys gravitate toward him. Regardless of who they add or who they don't keep, this is your dude at linebacker.
Yep.
I thought he had a fantastic year. I thought he earned that second team Pro Bowl or second team All Pro. I thought he earned that Pro Bowl spot. That's my guy. Who's yours? Because it's kind of difficult to think of some super success stories.
No, I feel like there's more than I was just going through, like looking at the depth chart. There was more that popped out for me. I like the Zaire Franklin. I know that's going to be controversial. You're going to get a little bit of hate for that, I'm sure.
That's fine.
Yeah, at D. Walster Drake on X if you need to throw something at him. But I like that. He said specifically that he was trying to work on increasing turnovers. I think that's something that when Shaq Leonard was around, that's something that the Colts loved having. And ever since Leonard got knocked out of the lineup with that back injury and never came back the same guy, they never really got that production in the turnover department back. So it was good to see Zaire take a step in that. I know he got burnt quite a bit in pass coverage, but you just kind of have to understand that as a linebacker, that's going to be his game. That's not going to be the strength of what he does. He's going to be there for the opportunistic interception, but I don't think he's going to stay glued on guys in coverage. I was just looking at the chat while you were going through your answer. There was a lot of good suggestions there that I would have liked to say, but I'm going to hold off. So Alec Pierce was good. Nick Cross was good for sure. Jalen Jones is always my guy, so I'm always going to say that. But my success story is actually going to be Will Fries, who's not even under contract at this point now. Just a guy that was such a late round draft pick and got kind of thrown into the starting lineup at right guard. And they drafted Tanner Bortolini. They drafted Matt Gonsalves. We didn't even know going into the season if he was going to be the out and out starter or win that kind of long term. And he solidified himself with his play earlier in the season before he broke his leg. That he was that guy. He played himself into that starting role. I think he played himself into a really good contract. So I think both team wise and personal wise, that's the biggest success story I saw in 2024.
Yeah, I like it. So one last question. It's pretty lighthearted. You have $20. This is from Taryn Canasp. You have $20 to spend on concessions at Lucas Oil Stadium. What are you spending it on? Noah, I'll let you start with this one. I have an answer, but I'll let you start with this one because $20 ain't much.
$20 is not a lot. My answer, my genuine, okay, no. So I'm not a big go to the game kind of guy, if we're being honest. I think that's going to get me some hate also, but man, you miss so much. I feel like when you're at the game, the stadium's just big, so many people, so many lights, and I just feel like my attention's too diverted. I'll miss something, and there's no rewinding when you're there live. So I like being on my couch, and when it goes to commercial, go rewatch the last couple plays again, and then fast forward through the commercials. So maybe my answer for this would be sell my ticket, take the $50 or whatever I get, add it to my 20, and then go out to eat. We'll go down to a bar, maybe go down to like the Slippery Noodle down there downtown by the stadium, and we'll drink and have a good time there instead and watch the game on TV.
That a boy. Well, I mean, we've got NFL Nerd says at a Braves game, it's the Jack and Coke slushy, nothing like it. You know what? I would say I'll jokingly take someone else's credit here. Get yourself a 16-ounce beer, and then you can tip for $20. But yeah, man, at the end of the day, we are looking at a Colts franchise that while they have the Senior Bowl, you got the Shrine Bowl tonight. The guys that weren't in the Senior Bowl, CJ West, check him out from Indiana, absolute monster on the interior. I will tell you right now that this is huge. This is massive. These questions that we answered, they are all indicative of where the Colts are as a franchise, and they're at a freaking crossroads, guys. I mean, all the way from Ballard to Steichen to Richardson, these guys have to make an impact in free agency. You have to draft the right players. You have to win your division probably, and at the least, you got to make these playoffs. You can't finish 8-9, 9-8, and have a crappy, underwhelming season again and expect this regime to stay intact. So, at the end of the day, Noah, this is really where the Colts are at. We had some great questions here. Yeah, they've got a lot ahead. They've got basically 3 months until the draft, and luckily they can make a couple of big impacts in between then.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's do or die. And we're going to say this probably at the end of every episode. Just how big this offseason is. Draft season, I'm glad that kicked off. I'm ready to dig into it deeper. The scouting combine, we're less than a month away from that being here in Indy. So I'm sure we're going to get together and do some content there for the combine and then leading up to draft season. So this is really just the beginning of it. Super Bowl next week, which a lot of people are not super excited for, which is a little bit of a bummer. But yeah, this offseason's kicking off to a good start. I'm pumped.
Yeah, and Hustleman Jones throwing down another one here at the end of the day. So, guys, we're not even going to get to Colts news and rumors. There's really not enough to talk about. That's our show. Thank you so much for all these questions, all this content. We were able to do a little bit of a hybrid episode, a little more lighthearted. We're starting, once this is over, ladies and gentlemen, we're starting to hit the dog days of the offseason. I mean, I know free agency's there and the draft is there, but that's, few and far between. I don't even think tampering starts. Legal tampering doesn't even start until early March, if I'm not mistaken. So you're not going to see some stuff. So we're going to keep on giving you the content here. Got to give a shout out. Scotty Colt, thank you so much. Hustleman Jones, 2 super chats. Patrick Rye, the CFO, thank you guys so much. as always. And do not hesitate to go and follow us. Subscribe if you want to follow us on Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube. Go and click the bell, turn on notifications. You want to listen to us on the podcast, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever else you listen. We are on there. If you have a question or comment and you want it featured on the show, just go ahead and throw it right there in the chat. We will get to it as soon as possible. And you know what, guys? We are going to be back on Monday. We're not 100% sure on the episode yet because there's just so many things happening, especially with the Shrine Bowl tonight. We've got Senior Bowl this weekend as well, so I'm sure we're going to touch on that a little bit too. But I'm Drake Wally. Always have to use the right hand. That over there is Noah Gebert. We really appreciate you guys. Enjoy the Shrine Bowl. Enjoy your weekend. Kick your feet up, have a drink or two, enjoy the family, and we will be seeing you all to talk more Colts football on Monday night. Take it easy.